granniopteryx, granniopteryx. She knows the truth, she's linking every link.
Hello. For those interested, I have made a short video about the behaviour of the armed police in their response to the synagogue attack on Thursday. Those police were supposed to preserve life, and I don't suppose it would be a surprise to you to be told that I came to the conclusion that their standard of marksmanship left quite a lot to be desired. But because I've dealt with that separately, I'm not going to be talking about it now. It's in YouTube Shorts if you want to look at it. Now, what I'm going to be talking about here is the motive which is most likely to have driven Mr. Al-Shami to the extreme course that he took. And I'm going to base my speculation on his motive using an example of an incident I read about that happened in Israel a few years ago. So, before I get to that, I'll tell you that I'm Granniopteryx. Please click that like and then share the video. And as always, please subscribe. And if you want to help me financially, all the links are in the description. Oh, and I noticed that quite a few people donated when they heard that my first reaction to the atrocity in Manchester was demonetised by YouTube. I do very much appreciate your care for me. I'm trying to remember to moderate my language in this video, but even if YouTube don't like it, I'm not going to shy away from the subject. So now I'm going to do a bit of a dive into Jihad Al-Shami. Right, so let's look at the background of this person's upbringing. It seems Al-Shami's senior, Faraj, is a surgeon. Let's have a look at him. He came to the UK with his family as some sort of a refugee or emigrant from Syria. I can't find out exactly when he came, but it must have been sometime in the 1990s, seeing as young Jihad was 16 in 2006 when he was granted British citizenship, and I've read he was 6 when he arrived in the United Kingdom. That would put him here sometime in around 1996, or the mid-1990s anyway. Now, in the mid-1990s, Syria was relatively stable, and a surgeon would have been a respected and valued member of Syrian society, and quite a high earner, and living in very comfortable circumstances. So I'm speculating that Faraj left Syria and the comfortable life there because he had some sort of disagreement with the Syrian regime, which was at the time being run by the authoritarian and secular regime of Hafez al-Assad, the father of the recently deposed Bashar al-Assad. Now enjoying life somewhere in Russia, I believe. It does look as if Dr. Al-Shami is a religious Muslim, and it appears that is how he brought up his children. Otherwise, he would probably not have named one of his sons Jihad. I'm aware that it's a relatively common name in the Muslim world, but it tends to be more traditional, more of a traditional type of Muslim who uses that sort of name. Now, the first thing that occurred to me when I read this article in the Telegraph was that Mr. Shami, a trauma surgeon who lived in council housing in Britain, he lived in a council house. Now, to start with, I can understand that. He was something of a refugee. He wasn't running from a war zone, but he might have had very little when he arrived in this country, and it would be perfectly reasonable for him to take up residence in a place where the rent was cheap. That is, subsidised by the state, at least to start with. But what surprised me was that further down the article it says he then moved to another council house. That is, a surgeon, a pretty good earner in any society, even under the NHS, seems to have been living for his entire time in the UK in council subsidised housing. Now, he did do most of his work in foreign parts, but even so, that would have given him a fairly good salary. And the fact that he was still living in council housing rather reminded me of the comment made by Anjem Chowdhury. Let's find his picture. That's Anjem Chowdhury there, a firebrand Muslim activist now in jail, when he was talking about he was making speeches and he was talking about the welfare state, of which he made a great deal of use. He referred to the job seekers allowance for his acolytes as the jihad seekers allowance, and then commented that it was right and proper for the non-believers to fund his and their Islamic lifestyle as a sort of jizya. If you don't know it, jizya is the tax imposed by Muslim rulers on the non-believers under their governance. So, let's get rid of Mr. Chowdhury. When I saw that Dr. Jihad Al-Shami appeared to be taking advantage of UK housing services which are meant to support people who are physically or mentally ill-equipped to put a roof over their own heads without some help, it did occur to me that the good doctor might have something of the same attitude as displayed by Mr. Chowdhury. Of course, this is only a guess, but in general, most British people try to get out of council housing when they feel they're earning enough to get their own place and can support themselves. Then there's Dr. Faraj's Facebook posts. He made those after the Hamas atrocities committed on October the 7th, 2023. You'll be able to find them online. They're all over the place, so I'm not going to bore you with the quotes, which would take up a lot of time. So for the sake of brevity, I shall just tell you that he was wholeheartedly in support of what Hamas had done and regarded every last one of the Hamas monsters as a hero and worthy of the highest accolade. Now, I would expect a doctor not to be living in a council house displacing someone really needy. And I would also expect a doctor not to regard a rapist, torturer, kidnapper and murderer of babies as a hero. But there you are. This appears to be the social structure with which Dr. Faraj was quite comfortable. And perhaps we might consider that his general outlook might have rubbed off at least a little bit on young Jihad. Now, I saw this article in the Telegraph. Britain offered home to Syrian family of killer who repaid the favour in cold blood. This article here says that Al-Shami was ungrateful. But you have to remember, while we're on the subject of the Hamas attack that I was talking about, that Faraj Al-Shami was so proud of, the Israeli villages which were attacked first by the Hamas creatures and then by the Gazan citizens who came afterwards to pick up the leavings, these villages were populated by idealists who were all on the left and who believed, so firmly in the brotherhood of man. It appears that many of them did their level best to help their brothers in Gaza, or the people they thought of as brothers, to the extent of driving them to Israeli hospitals for treatment they couldn't get in Gaza, and employing them in their villages in the sort of work and with the sort of conditions and benefits of which an average Gazan in Gaza could only dream. And those same Gazans repaid their Israeli neighbours by drawing maps of the villages so that Hamas would find it easier to invade at all the right places. You see, when you're a Muslim fanatic, it doesn't matter how nice the kafir is to you, the kafir isn't entirely human and so doesn't have to be treated with human gratitude. In fact, such consideration is expressly forbidden. So, if Jihad Al-Shami had that idea in his mind, there would be nothing else for us to expect from him. And there's no point in complaining that he repaid us with ingratitude. Now, let's get to Jihad himself. His two brothers appear to be successful people, but Jihad had been in trouble with the law for some petty offences, something of a string of them, and as it turns out, he was out on bail for a serious charge. A really serious charge. After a rape arrest, police say. OK, so keep all this in mind. Keep in mind the lack of gratitude, the lack of feeling of obligation. Keep in mind the idea that a terrorist who attacks the old, the young and the weak is a hero. And keep in mind the acceptance of the largesse of a state, which a religious Muslim might consider not to be something worthy of gratitude, but his right as a Muslim. Have you got all that? OK, now I'll tell you the promised story of an incident that happened in Israel a few years ago. A young man and his girlfriend, Israeli Arabs, I think, drove a car at an Israeli army checkpoint. Of course, as soon as it was realised the vehicle was being used for an attack, the soldiers opened fire. The boy was killed, but his girlfriend survived, and she was questioned about their motives, which turned out to be as follows. The couple of youngsters had given way to their passion for each other, and not being married, they realised this was a great sin. In fact, it was such a sin that both of them were going to end up in the fires of hell. Absolutely, no doubt about it. And bring shame on their family. However, there was a free ticket out of that sticky situation. If you die as a martyr, all your sins are forgiven and you go straight to paradise. You don't even spend your time in the Muslim version of purgatory. You just go straight into the golden palace with all the virgins and the rivers of wine and honey. So that's why that young couple took a car and tried to kill Israeli soldiers. When they were martyred, their family honour would be restored and they would spend the rest of all eternity enjoying the debauchery of paradise. I'm making a guess that this sort of thing was going through Jihad's mind. He was wearing a fake explosive vest, which would more or less guarantee his suicide by cop. And that would get him out of the legal problems he was enmeshed in. It would take him to paradise, and it would also satisfy the honour of his family. You will, of course, also notice that he's wearing a cap with a pattern on it very similar, the same, as a keffiyeh that has become the symbol of Gaza and the Palestinian cause. So he can tie all that together. He can get out of his legal problems. He could get to heaven. He could die a martyr for Palestine, and everything would be absolutely marvellous as far as he's concerned, just for the small price of knifing a couple of Jews. It would make his father so proud. What more could a good Muslim son want? Till next time. You can help my channel by subscribing and clicking the notification bell. That's quite important. And by sharing if you're so inclined. Links to my other channels and to donation methods are in the description. But the best way you can help is simply by clicking like and notify. Thank you.